that's out there watching us this morning. Thanks for joining us for this week's Legal Scope via Periscope by Clifford Gouldson Lawyers. This week we're joined by Howell, who has recently been appointed as the head of our construction section. So the legal issues around construction projects and construction law generally is one of the specialty areas that Clifford Gouldson practices in, and it's certainly one where clients benefit from having advisors with specific industry knowledge. Perhaps Kylie, if you could start by telling us a little bit about what's happening particularly in the Toowoomba and Darling Downs region in the construction industry.
It's actually a really exciting time to be in the construction industry locally. We've got a lot of continuing development happening. We've got Grand Central still underway. There's a lot of new home construction happening, and commercial development is ticking along nicely as well. The two big things that are in the pipeline for next year are the Nexus Second Range Crossing and the QGC's Charlie project, both of which are going to provide excellent opportunities for local contractors to get involved. Both of those projects have quite high local content targets, so it's a great time to be in the construction industry regionally. And that's something that we're really passionate about as well, is getting local contractors up to speed so that they can really participate well and be in the front running of winning work on those major projects.
All right, so that sounds good for the local industry. One of the things people often talk about in the construction industry, particularly around legal issues, is this idea of front-end and back-end legal issues. Could I get you initially to tell us a little bit about what that term front-end means and the type of services that Clifford Gouldson offers people in that area?
Sure, so front-end is really anything that happens before a dispute gets underway. So we break our front-end services into a couple of different categories. One is really getting your house and your business in order before you go through a tender process to get into these projects. That can be anything from QBCC licensing and compliance, business and structure startup and advice, reviewing and drafting of standard documents for internal use by our clients. We do a lot of training in-house for our clients to make sure that their staff are up to date with contract administration procedures and the relevant legislation that applies to the industry so that they can utilise that to their best advantage. And also our workplace team within the firm gives advice in relation to employment issues, enterprise bargaining agreements, compliance with modern awards. All of those things are really important to make sure you're doing that right before you go through a tender process so that you can demonstrate to these major players that your business is operating efficiently and well. Then the next stage of the front end type of work is the tender phase. So we can help people review tender requirements, make sure that they comply with the terms and conditions of tender, review tenders that they're putting in for these projects to make sure that they've covered off on everything that should be covered off legally, and to check that they're aware of the risks that are involved in projects and to make sure that they've included contingencies in their tenders to cover off on those. Then we can also assist with any contract negotiations, reviews and advice that happen as part of that process. Then the next phase of front-end work is if you win the contract, you're doing the work, you need to make sure that you are complying with that contract really, really well. So again, it's review and advice of those contracts to make sure that you understand key terms, provisions, time limits, risks, and what all of those things mean for you and how you need to comply with them. One thing that we often do for our clients is create tailored contract administration processes, policies and documents so that they've got a really smooth process internally to make sure that they're getting their extensions of time claims in on time, that they're documenting all their variations correctly and putting in their payment claims so that they comply both with the contract and the provisions of the Building and Construction Industry Payments Act, which is really important. And it's really focusing on those issues as part of the front end, which avoids disputes arising, which is really the back end of the work that we do.
Okay, so it certainly sounds like anybody that's going to be chasing work from some of these big projects or with the kind of continued growth of the industry should be talking to a construction lawyer really pretty early on to make sure they've got their house in order, as you say. And as you mentioned, obviously not all construction projects and relationships between parties run smoothly. So Can you tell us a bit more about what that back end of construction law means and how we help clients at that time?
Yeah, so despite everyone's best intentions, things don't always go to plan. So we offer dispute management services across a range of areas. So early on, even a formal dispute may not even have arisen yet, but you might have identified an issue that you're having on a particular contract that you're concerned may give rise to a dispute moving forward. So one of the things that we encourage clients to do is come to us early so we can have a chat, review what's happened, have a look at the contract, and provide some strategic advice around resolving that issue, hopefully before it becomes a fully fledged dispute. But we can assist in just that giving advice so that you can deal with it yourself, or getting involved, liaising with the other parties to the contract just to try to smooth things over and get the project back on track. If things move down the dispute road a little bit further, then we can assist with formal negotiation and mediation. We can help with both commencing and defending adjudication proceedings under the Building and Construction Industry Payments Act. We've got experience with the Subcontractors Charges Act, which is a really useful piece of legislation for subcontractors down the chain to get paid, and we can commence court proceedings under that legislation as well. And then there's also the general breach of contract damages type claims, which we both commence for plaintiffs and defend for defendants.
Okay. Well, I think that's a pretty good outline of the services in this area and the sort of things that we can help clients with in the construction industry. Certainly encourage anybody that has concerns or questions or really any issues in this area to get in touch with Kylie. As I mentioned, Kylie is the head of the construction section here at Clifford Gouldson. And I'll just take this opportunity to remind everyone that these legal scope sessions are on via Periscope every Friday at 9:45 Australian Eastern Standard Time, and that replays are available on the Clifford Gouldson YouTube channel. Just search for Clifford Gouldson Lawyers on there. Now we'll be back next week for one more of these, and then we'll be taking a break over the Christmas and New Year period. So we look forward to seeing you again next week and then in January. Kylie, thank you again for your time, and we'll see everyone next week.
Thanks, John.